Welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute devotional podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse. Broadcast from the ever-beautiful Sharonville, Ohio, on the sunny side of Cincinnati.
Hey there, friends. Welcome back to Daily Dose Radio here in the Bible Bistro. And today in the Bible Bistro, we're looking at Psalm 137, verse 7. So come on in here, sit down with me, and get yourself something hot or cold to drink. Open up your Bible if you have a Bible available to you. If not, I'll be glad to read this verse for you here in just a moment. But before we jump into verse 7, let me just remind you, Daily Dose Radio has a web page. Yes, sir, we have a spot on the interwebs, and it's called my-dailydose.com. And it's not just for Daily Dose Radio, it is for all of the Bible Bistro. So you'll find there the Bible Bistro University entries, you'll find the links for Daily Dose Radio, for the Creek Road Baptist Pulpit, for the worship recordings on Sundays. You'll find the books there, you'll find all kinds of stuff. Speaking of books, I've got a brand new book that's just come out. It's a book of poetry. It's based on Psalm 119, so really just for you guys in my Daily Dose Radio audience. Psalm 119 inspired these poems, so I hope you go out and check it out. It's called Finding His Way. You'll find the link there on my-dailydose.com, or you can go to Amazon and enter Finding His Way 100 Poems Inspired by Psalm 119. So today we're looking at verse 7, and verse 7 is very specific. We've talked about Babylon, we've talked about Jerusalem and Zion and singing and harps and instruments and all that, about forgetting and remembering. That has been back and forth between all of those themes. But today in verse 7, we're asked to remember again. So the first remembering was done in verse 1, when we remembered Zion. So they're in Babylon, they're trying now to remember Zion. When we remembered Zion, we wept. Then we have in verse 6, if I do not remember thee. So that is juxtaposed to the forgetting. So if I forget thee, O Jerusalem, is in verse 5. If I do not remember thee is in verse 6. So those two work together almost like a quatrain, those four lines. And then we have in verse 7, remember, O Lord. So it's we that remember, it's I that remember, and now it is, O Lord, remember. So now this is a request. The Lord is being asked to remember, but he's being asked to remember something very specific. Remember, O Lord, the children of Edom in the day of Jerusalem, who said, raise it even to the foundation thereof. Now that's verse 7, and you'll notice, as I said, it's very specific because it's the children of Edom on the day when Jerusalem was razed by the Babylonians. So we're still there in that time period. Here's what they said, raise it even to the foundations. So the Edomites came in and they didn't stand with Judah. No, they stood against Judah. They stood with the Babylonians. Of course, they realized on which side their bread was buttered. They knew that if they didn't stand with the Babylonians, that they would be destroyed next. But they should have at least behaved like they were afraid of the Lord and his wrath, because they don't here. Notice the language, raise it to the foundations, just scrape it. Scrape everything off of this place. That's how the Edomites treated the children of Judah. Now, we have just this one entry here in Psalm 137, but if you go back and you look at the book of Obadiah, Obadiah is a prophecy against Edom, and in the book of Obadiah, and Obadiah is just one chapter long, verse 11 of the book of Obadiah, in the day that thou stoodest on the other side, in the day that the strangers carried away captives, his forces and foreigners entered into his gates, and cast lots upon Jerusalem. Even you were one of them, were as one of them. But thou shouldest not have looked on the day of thy brother in the day that he became a stranger. Neither shouldest thou have rejoiced over the children of Judah in the day of their destruction. Neither shouldest thou have spoken proudly in the day of distress. And what did they say in the day of distress? Here's our quote right here in verse 7. That's what they spoke proudly. Verse 13 in Obadiah, thou shouldest not have entered into the gate of my people in the day of their calamity. Yea, thou shouldest not have looked on their affliction in the day of their calamity, nor should have laid hands on their substance in the day of their calamity. Neither shouldest thou stood in the crossway to cut off those of his that did escape. Neither shouldest thou have delivered up those that did remain in the day of distress. So you see that Obadiah records for us exactly what happened, and so that gives light now to verse 7 when they said raise it to the foundations. Well, we know what they were doing, don't we? We know that they were helping and they were cheering on the Babylonians as they destroyed the city. Join me again tomorrow and we'll look at verses 8 and 9 on Daily Dose Radio.
Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. I'm David Smith. The music today has been performed by the Bluegrass Experiment. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time on Daily Dose Radio.